واحتراما لموقعه كرئيس سابق للحكومة وكنجل شهيد بدأنا مسارنا الليكسي معه.
دقيت لك أول امبارح بالليل. ما رديت عليه، رديت مرة ثانية، بعدين طلعت ساعة يمكن نامت، يمكن الصبح بدق لي. لعلك إنه في عوة بدها تروح على LBC، طلعت بمي، راحت مي. في عندي ناس أنا قلت لك لهلا
ثم عرضت عم بدك تحكيني تبقى في المسج.
وقت الضرورة مسج ما أنا عرفان إنكم يبعث المسج، عم بكتب لك أنا أحيانا.
وعلى حلقات متتالية عرضنا جلسات تحقيق لسعد الحريري، ليس المر.
When they choose General Sulaiman, did they choose him because he was a Superman? They choose him because he was the weakest officer for the army.
حسام
لو كان القاضي ميرزا شريفا وصادقا كما يدعي لقام بتوقيفي في نفس الليلة التي ذهبت فيها إلى النيو تي في، ولكن كنت على ثقة يا صديقي أنه القاضي ميرزا كان يعلم بكل هذه اللعبة، وشرحت له مرارا وتكرارا، وآخر ما ضربني بلوح الشوكولا كان موجود على طاولته.
ضربني
بلوح شوكولا. أنه رجل فاسد بكل معنى الكلمة.
وجميل السيد.
أنا 58 سنة بلا مؤاخذة، شبعان مراكز وشبعان نسوان وشبعان مصاري وبالحلال ومن أصدقاء لي ولليوم بعدهم بيرعوا عائلتي. ما عندي مشكل بالموضوع هذا، وأنا بقبل المساعدة بدون بدل.
واليوم والتزاما بالقول الشهير ختامها مسك، حقيقة ليكس ستختم جولتها الأولى قبل استراحة قلم مع ضيف شرفها الرئيس سعد الحريري، والذي سيطل عليكم من داخل جلسة التحقيق وعلى أيام متتالية، لنكون بذلك عرضنا كل ما تبقى من جلسة الساعات الست للرئيس الشاب، دحضا لتهمة الاجتزاء والاستنساب.
سعد الدين رفيق الحريري.
ولكن من واجبنا المهني الاعتراف بأننا قمنا باقتطاع ما لا يغير في النص ولا يؤثر في مضمونه، ومنها السكوت المتكرر للرئيس الشاب بين جملة وأخرى وكلمة وأخرى، الاسترسال بلزوم ما لا يلزم كنميمة شخصية جدا أخلاقيا نمتنع عن بثها، تكرار الفكرة بالمضمون ذاته ولكن بطريقة مختلفة. ما تبقى من كلام الحريري سيتناول التهديد الموجه إلى ليس المر، وسائل الإعلام، الاغتيالات السورية، آصف شوكت، رستم غزالي، دور الرئيس نبيه بر السلبي تجاه رفيق الحريري، عبد الحليم خدام، فاروق الشرع، ضلوع ماهر الأسد وإميل لحود وغيرهما في ملف بنك المدينة، التمديد للحود والقرار 1559، اجتماع رفيق الحريري الأخير في سوريا، ورشا السياسيين لغزالي. وإليكم الجزء الأول عن المرحلة الأخيرة في الجولة الأولى لحقيقة ليكس.
We restart the ninth session of the interview of Mr. Saad al-Hariri on the 29th of July 2007. Time is 10 p.m. So we were saying, yes, he showed you a map, you said. The first time you met him.
Yeah.
You met Mr.
He came
to
give me his condolences and all that. And then he showed me a map of how they were going to try to assassinate him. And he told me that Rustam Ghazali was after that. At the time I didn't believe him.
Which was the map?
You know, his house, where his house and where they were going to plant the bomb and things like that.
Was it a big map, small map?
No, small.
A4?
Yeah, A4.
It's an A4 like this?
Yeah.
But I'm referring to the page in front of me, which is an A4 size.
Yeah.
So you're not aware, you confirm that you're not aware of the content of the discussion between your late father and Mr. Ilyas al-Mur in Geneva?
No. But the people who would be in front of the discussions would be Hani Hamoud, and the late Basil Shayhan.
Okay.
Basil was there also.
Okay.
Basani Hamoud was there, and he was there sitting with them. Yani sometimes I talk to Elias, who became me and him very much good friends, and he would tell me, we were talking about, how the Syrians were, have become to a different level of dealing with Lebanon in a violent way. And he used to say that it was one of the nicest times that he would spend with my father, as if my father was saying to him goodbye. Because I think that was the last time he saw my father in Geneva.
Are you aware of what kind of role he was playing, Mr. Marr?
When?
During these discussions, remember?
Yes, was running away.
Okay. Running away.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, after the problem that happened to him with Rustam Ghazali, what he told me, or what he tells me now, that he left Lebanon because even his uncle, which was the president, wasn't capable in protecting him from the attempt of the assassination, because he was convinced that the Syrians wanted Liasamor to be assassinated. So his uncle, he told me, Liasamor, that my uncle advised me to leave Lebanon.
Yeah. You stated earlier that when we were talking about kind of a rapprochement between President Lahoud and your late father, we stated one, and you stated Elias Moore. How you became aware that Elias Moore was trying to fix some...
I used to see Elias Moore here in the house with my father. And his impression of Elias Moore was that he was a very intelligent person, but yet also very political. He's a very political oriented. Elias, if you look at the history of Elias Moore, Elias was with Elih Baya, for instance. And he was with, I think, Michel Aoun at one point. I think he was. So Elias is a tough cookie. He's not a simple guy. But he is a when he became Minister of Interior, it meant that his father wasn't minister anymore. So basically, his father-in-law kicked his friend Michel Moore and brought the son-in-law as Minister of Interior. And that was, if you want to take it ethically, wasn't very ethical. But Elias was a professional guy, and he worked in the Ministry of Interior to build a Ministry of Interior. He wanted to do something. He wanted to achieve something.
Yeah. So are you aware of Mr. Moore trying to make a kind of rapprochement between your late father and and President Lahoud?
Yes.
On what kind of subject?
For all political problems. You see, the problem is everything was stopped in Lebanon. And whenever my father wanted a project, Lahoud would say no. Okay. Just for the sake of saying no to Rafiq Hariri. Ibrahim Al-Amin, one of the people of Jamil Said, I forgot. Ibrahim Al-Amin now who leads the newspaper Al-Akhbar, was one of the people who used to work with Talal. See, he had Jamil Said had Ibrahim Al-Amin in Safir, Ula Nasif in Al-Nahar, and Tariq Tarshishi in Sharq Al-Awsat. and was إن شاء الله أيوب يعني إن شاء الله أيوب was الديار.
Since we are talking about journalists, what was the nature of the relationship between your father and Samir Qasir?
Samir Qasir, I don't think they had a very outstanding relationship. He was a journalist like any other journalist, but Samir Qasir at one point called my father, or what's her name, Giselle called my father, and Jamil Said was harassing Samir Qasir, and there was this incident where they were in a restaurant called I think Baltus maybe, or and actually I don't think my father knew them, and they told him this is Samir Qasir, and they made this trap to see if there were really people following Samir Qasir. So they took my father put them in his car, took off, and he was Prime Minister and he had security with him, and they stopped the people who were following Samir Qasir, and there was a big story the next day in the newspapers.
Okay.
And I think since then maybe they developed a relationship, but I don't know the details.
The 0 hour was coming close. Is that what you said?
Yeah, to kill my father.
Yeah.
She had started with a political process.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, they extended Lahoud. Second, they developed what I would say a war cabinet, council of ministers. Third, they started pushing, they tried to kill Marwan Ahmadi, sending a message to Walid Jumlat and Rafiq Hariri, who failed. They removed the security from my father, and then they campaigned. And then also Michel Aoun, trying to get Michel Aoun back. It's a process.
It's a process. Yeah.
If they wanted to get rid of the whole political, the political scenery in Lebanon, they can't do it just like that. They have to build a process. Plus they had the problem of the elections.
So, as you stated, you didn't react. Your late father didn't react to this campaign. Yeah.
I think my father, maybe we're getting a little bit philosophical here. I think after what happened to him on the boat, his blood pressure went down to 2%, 2 or 3. I think he saw death, and he wasn't afraid anymore. And he was happy. And he was doing what he wanted for the first time for Lebanon. And he was convinced, I will win the election. I will not become Prime Minister. And that's what he was telling me. I don't want to become Prime Minister. Even if I win the election, I don't want to do anything that will upset Syria.
You stated that your father at a certain time felt threatened.
That's correct.
Did he undertook any kind of security measures to increase the security measures when he felt this threat?
Yeah, sometimes he would accept to have convoys, fake convoys. But my father was, unfortunately, he never listened to the security.
Okay.
And he wouldn't, although we had, I remember before leaving, I said to him, don't go out from here, go out from the parking, listen to Abu Tariq, listen to the security, don't drive.
Organizationally, Abu Tariq would report to whom?
to my father. But
I don't think your late father was into these details as you were mentioning.
no, يعني he wasn't in the details, but يعني let's say who would form the convoy, you mean? Who would, it would be between, I would guess, Abu Tariq would lead. Actually, there would be the one from the Lebanese ISF, and there was a method of training that they trained on how to be in a convoy, how they change the cars and that. And it was either Abu Tariq or Jamal or Muhammad Diab or whoever was, the senior. For instance, usually Abu Tariq used to ride in front in the car ahead of my father. A month or two he started riding, in the back tail of my father.
Are you aware of any plans being prepared for your father to go to Damascus on the 15th of February 2005?
To go to Damascus? There was Walid Muallim who came to Lebanon, and I knew that he was trying to better the relationship between my father and Bashar. But I believe that that was not true. And I know that Walid Muallim came and he saw my father but the Syrians work in a funny way, and not in a funny way, but in a devious way. They will send you a positive message, and then something totally negative happens. Like Dilemma goes to Syria after the tribunal, and 10 days later Walid Eido gets killed, and 6 days later UNIFIL gets bombed.
I have to ask you this question. You stated that you believe that Asif Shawkat and Maher al-Assad are involved in the assassination of your late father. It's based on what?
Based on Asif is known. Asif is one of the most hardliners in my father, and he used to hate my father, and it was known. We used to receive from different people like Eli al-Farzli and even what's his name, Mustam Ghazali, which was reporting to Asif what Asif was saying about Rafiq Hariri. And Asif Shawkat is the head of the military intelligence, or became the head of the military intelligence after assassinating my father, after Bajad Sulaiman. That was 4 or 5 days after the assassination of my father. He did. And then after a few days, they delivered to the Americans Taha Yassin Ramadan, I think, or one of the Iraqi wanted people. There was this card, these Iraqis that the Americans wanted in Iraq. So it was quite ridiculous, He became head of intelligence, and a few days later they delivered to the Americans this Iraqi. I think Taha Yassin or somebody like that. So, quid pro quo, I think they thought, I remember, I think once I went with, I'm not taking money, but I remember when Emil Lahoud became president. I went to Rustam Ghazali and he was still in Beirut. And at the time, I relayed the message to Rustam Ghazali from my father that Emil Lahoud was cursing saying something about Emil Lahoud was claiming that he was so loyal to the Syrians, and we got news that he was going to undermine the Syrians with the Americans somehow. So my father he wanted to relay the message, and he sent me and told Rustam, be careful, something funny is happening. So I went and said exactly, and I told Rustam, if you want the details, you need to see my father. Because I was traveling, so I was on my way. But then Rustam, when he became, instead of, what's his name, Ghazi Kanaan, then he became extremely jealous of everything that had to do with Ghazi Kanaan. And if anybody mentioned Ghazi Kanaan or who was close to Ghazi Kanaan, not only when it comes to my father, but also he was very anti-Ghazi Kanaan. And vis-a-vis my father, he was very abusive. On the phone calls, on several occasions, he would be sitting around with ministers or whatever, and he would be saying, شو قال هالأخ الشرموطة رفيق الحريري? And they would come and tell my father.
Never directly.
On the phone, yes. He told me twice that he did this. My father.
Am I correct to say that the payment starts since?
But no, I don't know if since he was in Beirut that he got 100,000, maybe much less.
Okay.
But after, when he became higher up and he started abusing more and more. For instance, when my father was assassinated, 3 days later, Abed came to me and said, can you believe that son of a bitch, he sent his car to maintenance and he wants us to pay for it? I said to him, tell him to go screw himself.
So how much, before continuing with the payments, am I correct to understand from what you just said that the relationship also between the late your father and Ghazi Kanaan was not that good?
No. You see, Ghazi was a very tough negotiator and a very tough, Ghazi, is one of the most vicious Syrian officers, you could say. Mm-hmm. But Ghazi understood Lebanon, the balance between the president, the prime minister, and the speaker of the house. He was purely an idiot. He wasn't a politician.
How much in total, according to you anticipate was paid to Ghazali over the years? Or not?
Over the years? It would be more than $8-9 million then. But you would be talking over a period of 13-15 years. Yeah.
So since he was the head of the Beirut office, Beirut office.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was one of the things that most politicians did in Lebanon. Paid for Rustam, these bastards. And I don't think there is a politician in Lebanon that had money, let's say, that didn't pay.
Like who?
I'm sure Isam Faris used to pay. I'm sure that Muhammad al-Safadi paid. I'm sure Michel Moore paid. I'm sure, whoever had Na'mat Ommi. They blackmailed you. Blackmailed you with everything. So to get them off your back, it's like racketeering. I think that's what they call it, racketeering. So you see why they didn't want to leave Lebanon, they want to come back.
What did they expect all this?
What did we expect from this?
Yeah, you were referring to some Lebanese politician or You stated all of them, and you mentioned, or some of them, and you mentioned few of them, and what do they expect in return?
To get off their back, to get services, to, get, if they wanted to go to Syria without getting checked in the border, they could turn your life, miserable. And if Rustam Ghazali decides, to stop you in the airport and make the Lebanese police search your bags, they would. If they would give you services. Yeah. If you wanted to appoint somebody in the government, they would help you, but not with Rafiq Hariri. Rafiq Hariri was somebody that they abused totally.
You stated as I earlier said, you stated that people would end up in prison.
Yeah.
Is there any example in mind that do you remember?
Yeah, there was this Jamal Jarrah, I think it was Jamal or his cousin or something like that. We had to pay money to get him out, or to get something, a file that was fabricated on him. Paid at the time $250,000 or $500,000.
To whom?
To Rustam. They had fabricated a story. I can get you tomorrow.
Oh, it's okay. Okay. Yeah, tomorrow we will have a discussion about it. When you said, even now you stated it was pure blackmailing.
Racketeering. No.
You prefer this one?
Racketeering.
Okay. Now, we stated that even now you said that Rustam Ghazali was using full language against your late father. But did your late father consider at a certain time to stop paying Ghazali?
Yes. Yani sometimes he would delay payments for Ghazali.
Okay. You said that he would delay, but my question was like, did he consider stop paying Ghazali?
I think, I don't know to tell you that if he considered that it was in mind, but knowing my father, that the way he was going in his mind, he would have stopped. Khalas, because he was going through a phase where he was saying to himself that I will win the elections, I will not become prime minister, I will become a leader, and I will run politics from outside. I don't need to be, prime minister. So I will, so he wouldn't have to deal with all the disgusting issues. And he would be a kingmaker or a prime minister maker. He would appoint somebody.
You said earlier that Saturday Abu Tariq went.
I think Saturday or Sunday, but one of those days. And
okay.
I came on, I guess, the 14th of March was on Monday, right?
That's right.
February. When I came that night and I saw, everybody was devastated and pushed. And I think it was either Wissam or Abed who told me that Abu Tariq went to his house. He went to see Rustam Ghazali and came back to his house. And my father was looking for him, and he wouldn't answer the phone because he was he was shocked from the words he heard. He went to his daughter's house, Ali, I think, and we stayed there for 3-4 hours, and then he came and said to my father, I don't know what he said to him, but apparently what he said. I think I understood that he said to him that the Syrians are extremely upset and things are not okay. I don't know if it was Saturday or Sunday after Terry Rod Larson had seen him.
This was reported to you by Abd or Wissam?
Wissam.
Both of them are aware of this story from
I tried to ask
the late Abu Tariq or what?
I tried to ask Abd to see if Alia knew, to ask Alia, but apparently he didn't talk to Alia or his brother, because Alia is married to his brother, the brother of Abd. But Abu Tariq is, you have to understand the relationship between Abu Tariq and my father. For me, all of this, I know that you need to get evidence and all of that, but for me, my own conviction is they killed him. For me, I know that you're doing all of this for the sake of the court, but I would, it would make sense for me that Abu Tariq would go to Rustam Ghazali and Rustam Ghazali would curse the hell out of my father. And I would understand that why Abu Tariq would go to his house and probably cry, thinking that his boss is going to get killed. Knowing Abu Tariq, how he is, and how he became, he wanted to be so close. Like now, Abed, with me, he is like my shadow. And even when I sleep on the third floor, he sleeps next to my room.
What I tried to point out is, did Wissam or Abed, who reported to you this fact, got the story from Abu Tariq himself or from somebody else?
From Abu Tariq. But Abu Tariq wouldn't tell them. But
so how they became aware of it, according to you?
Abu Tariq,
if he would not tell them.
Abu Tariq would.
But you can find Wissam is his boss.
No, Wissam is not the boss of Abu Tariq.
No?
No. Wissam, my father is quite a management skill. Abu Tariq is the boss of this certain, the very close security entourage. Wissam, at the time, he stopped being the responsible of security. He became, the protocol guy, and I think at the time even Wissam resigned from the. I think he gave his resignation. I think so, from the ISF. I think so. I'm not sure, but Wissam became just, close to, responsible for all the meetings of my father, and he was taking courses in English and all of that. And I would understand, the way it would have been done is, or if I had to draw a picture, Abu Tariq came and couldn't even say it to Wissam, but they knew that he wanted to see Rustam Ghazali, and they would come and say, "Sure, what happened with Rustam?" I said, الوضع مش منيح, or situation is not good, it's bad. But he wouldn't tell them he wouldn't tell them the details. Where were you, Abu Tariq? This is how it would have happened. Then he would go inside my father's office and he would tell him what happened. I don't know if Fuad Sanura was in the office when Abu Tariq came in. Maybe he was. Maybe Fuad Sanura was in the office when Abu Tariq came. But knowing my father, he probably would have taken Abu Tariq on the side, because my father didn't want, he wanted to make sure that people around him weren't scared. So he would take the news himself and keep it, and wouldn't, let anybody feel fear. Hikmat Shabi, Ali Duba. Now there is Muhammad Nasif, Abu Wa'il, they call him. which at the time of Hafiz al-Assad hated my father, even at the time of Hafiz al-Assad. I remember at one occasion, he picked up the phone, were in Damascus, and he told Abu Jamal or Hikmat Shabi, one of them, he told him, فيك تقول له, can you tell Abu Wa'il to get off my back? And that was in 93. Anyway, so his political life started with those people. President Hafiz al-Assad and all these other people. And Ghazi Kan'an. When Bashar became, when Basil died, Basil al-Assad, son of Hafiz, and it wasn't clear for him, or Hafiz al-Assad didn't tell him to deal with Bashar. And I think Bashar had this impression of my father, or that الحريري is a successful prime minister in Lebanon and all of that. But at the same time, a lot of reports, the people who Bashar grew up with or brought him up was Muhammad Nasif, Abu Wa'il, who hated my father. Don't ask me why, I don't know. So it didn't start, and my father was, dealing with Abdul Halim Khaddam, Hikmat Shabi, and then he thought, if Hafiz al-Assad wanted me to deal with Bashar, he would have told me, because that's normally how Hafiz al-Assad worked. And plus he was loyal somehow to Hikmat and my father is a very loyal person to his friends. Although if you look at historically the amount of agony that Hikmat Shabi and Abu Jamal, Abdul Halim Khaddam put my father through, it is a lot of agony. They weren't his friends all the time, but at least he knew how to deal with them. The relationship didn't, in the beginning I don't think there was, he didn't know him until one day they met. I don't remember when they met, but I think they met for the first time after, I'm not sure though, after he left, after being prime minister, after stopping being prime minister. That was the first time they met, either in 98 or 99. I don't know if I met him with him. No, I think they met alone. Anyway, so they met, and the first meeting, السابع was with him. And when he left the meeting, he told, Basim told me that my father told him. My father was happy, he put the music on. And he told him, sure you're happy? Was it good? Was it okay? And he said, we're going to have a lot of problems with new kid. So the first impression, Bashar wasn't an impressive impression. And my father tried to open up to Bashar. He tried to, but what he tried to do is to convince Bashar that, Lebanon is we can do so much together, but without all this corruption that is happening in Lebanon and all of that. And in the beginning it worked. But then I think because of the reporting that was happening from Jamil al-Sayyid, from Emil Lahoud, all the good guys like Nasser Andil and these people undermined my father. Plus you had people like Hezbollah and Nabih Berri and all these people that didn't want the relationship to get better. And it was in their political interest that Rafiq Hariri and Bashar al-Assad don't get. Why to extend to Emil Lahoud? I think they can't find somebody like Emil Lahoud that is such a pleasing, would do anything for the regime. Second of all, I think also part of extending to Emil Lahoud, now it's an analysis. Before Hezbollah used to tell me, we didn't care. But I think Hezbollah played a big role in that. Because if you look at how Hezbollah, Emil Lahoud reacted with Hezbollah, he was always supporting Hezbollah. So what more, you have a president who never says that you are wrong. So they had support from Hezbollah. Emil Lahoud had support from Hezbollah, a strategic ally of Iran. And plus, maybe Bashar wanted to say that nobody tells me what to do in Lebanon. I do what I please in Lebanon, and I am the boss. A fatal mistake.
How many times you met with you? I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir. Go ahead.
Because it doesn't, for me, I think of it, they could have brought Sulaiman Franji, they could have brought John Abed, they could have brought whoever they wanted. And they had promised Saudi Arabia they wouldn't bring Emil Lahoud. They had promised Egypt they wouldn't extend to Emil Lahoud. They had promised France and the United States. They promised and then they changed their mind.
So what happened? Why they changed their mind?
Beats me. Maybe there was too much corruption. They were afraid from Medina Bank.
Is it correct to say that your father trusted Walid Mu'al?
Yes.
And he dealt with him openly?
I think he dealt with him, I don't know how openly he would deal. He would be still wary of Walid Mu'al. Because in the end Walid, he has his own boss, which is Bashar al-Assad. But I think he would say to Walid Mu'allim things that he would never say to Farouk al-Shari' or anybody, or Rustam Ghazali or anybody of those. Definitely. And he would say to Abdul Halim Khaddam things that he would never say to Walid Mu'allim. When Abdul Halim was still vice president.
Would he tell more to Walid Mu'allim?
No.
No,
he would
the other way?
Abdul Halim Khaddam.
So he would trust Abdul Halim Khaddam more than, and share with him info more than with Walid Mu'allim?
Yes. Because Abdul Halim was being ousted. Abdul Halim at the time, when Bashar became president, Abdul Halim was pushed away, slowly but surely. And more he became alienated from the regime and ousted. But my father, I remember one time we were having a conversation, me and Rami Makhlouf, and he says, and he told me, why is your father always coming to see Abdul Halim Khaddam? I said to him, Rami, you should be concerned if he doesn't go see Abdul Halim Khaddam. He says, why are you saying this? Because I told him, look, if you're not loyal to your friends, how can you trust my father? And this was the logic of my father. He was loyal.
Why would your father share more with Abdul Halim Khaddam rather than with Walid Mu'allim, though he trusts and though he's in charge between two branches of the
Let me put it this way.
Please.
If my father wanted to say that Bashar is making a huge mistake and he needs to understand that Lebanon needs to be ruled by the Lebanese and we're not going to be against Syria, and I think this is what he said to Walid at the time. With Abdul Halim, the way he would have put it, he said, sure, what's wrong with this crazy friend of yours? And this is what I meant.
Okay.
But with Walid, he would say, why is Bashar doing this? Why is Bashar against me? What did I do against Bashar?
Yeah.
He would say that. But with Abdul Halim, he would say, what in the world?
Yeah.
He would be more
Outspoken.
Outspoken. That's what I meant. 3 days of mourning, and maybe very after a week he tried to open a session to discuss the electoral law for Lebanon. No, خلاص, it's finished. It's behind us.